What's up, bitches?
Let's talk about crime.
What's up, bitches?
Hello.
What did you say?
I was saying, fuck, I really should have gotten us coffee.
No
I'm over here
shit,
like,
I'm
Jesus
dying.
Christ.
I'm dying today. I'm tired. We're here, and just everybody hold on to your seats, because this is next episode after this. So this is episode 51. So next week is episode 52, which is a 1 year since Sierra and I have been doing Crime Bitches. Yay.
Which is so crazy to think about.
It goes fast, doesn't it? I'm forewarning you, next week is going to be a very different episode than what we normally do. I'm not going to give away too much, but I am going to tell you we're not going to focus on one specific case. So I'm just going to leave you with that tidbit so that you can look forward to next week. I don't think there's really anything else to say, so we're just going to jump right into it. Before we get into this episode, I'm going to put a big old warning on this episode. This episode deals with the murder of a child, and it is not going to be easy or fun to talk about. So if this is not your thing, no worries. Skip the episode and we will catch you next week, which again will be a special 1 year episode. So if you aren't going to stick around, catch you on the flip side, bitches. I'm not kidding either. This was a hard one to research. It was it actually made me so mad that when I was completely done researching, I looked at your dad and I was like, can you fucking believe this? And I literally yelled at him about it. And it was like,
I already feel like I'm going to have the same opinion now.
I yelled at him, but I think,
Because if you have that opinion,
and the thing is, I'm angry at multiple parts of it. I'm not angry at just the murder. I'm angry at a lot. And of course we'll get into it as we go. So what are we talking about? We are talking about February of 1993 in Merseyside, England. James Bulger is abducted and murdered, and Jon Venables and Robert Thompson are held responsible. So there's not a ton of background on the killers, but we're going to talk about it anyways. So Jon Venables was born August 13th, 1982. Literally, I found nothing about John's younger years or his background. However, if you have not done the math yet, you can figure out that Jon Venables was 10 years old at the time of the murder. So that's why there's not a lot of background, because he was only 10. Now, Robert Thompson was born August 23rd, 1982. And again, based off the math, you know now that Robert is also, just like John, 10 years old at the time of the abduction and murder. Now, Robert was the fifth of 7 children. And his father actually abandons his family when he's about 5 years old, which in turn his mother turns to drinking and spirals into like this crazy depression. And it was also alleged that she tried to take her own life a couple of times. So he had kind of a unstable childhood. Now, prior to the murder of James, Robert had no record, and there was nothing that would make someone think that he would commit such a heinous crime as what he did. He was described as being a clever and street smart boy. And the investigators who actually talked to him after the murder said that he tried very hard to con them. They felt like he was conning them. They said that anytime they would ask him a question that would be awkward in any sense to him, he would cry just to avoid having to answer the question. But you have to think about it. He's 10 years old.
Oh, yeah. For some reason that slipped my brain. I'm sitting here like a grown man.
No, he's 10 years old. And so it's like, when you think about that, a 10-year-old that did something wrong, maybe doesn't even completely grasp the fact that there was something wrong, or that what they did was fully wrong. I'm not really sure, because I feel like a 10-year-old, you know right from wrong for sure. But the actions of what you did, maybe you didn't think at the time would result in what they did. So who knows? So since the background information is in super short supply, we're going to actually just get right into the abduction and murder of James Bulger. So on February 12th, 1993, CCTV footage shows John and Robert together at the New Strand Shopping Center in Bootle. Now, the boys were skipping school on this day. They were perusing the mall, which, by the way, they often skip school together. They were friends. They chose not to go to school, and they chose to hang out at like this. It's like a mall, strip mall. No, it's like a mall. The two boys were actually observed on CCTV footage, shoplifting in multiple locations and stealing multiple items throughout the whole shopping center. This includes things like sweets, like candies, batteries, a troll doll, and a can of blue Homebrew model paint. So they were seen on this footage going in and out of stores. They're seen literally shoplifting and then going on to other stores. On that same afternoon, James Bulger, who is 2 years old. So this is about a murder of a 2-year-old by two 10-year-old boys. James Bulger, who is 2 years old at the time, is also at the same shopping center with his mother, Denise. And at about 3:40 in the afternoon, Denise and James are in the A.R. Tim's butcher shop. And Denise lets go of James' hands, like just for a few minutes to pay for her shop, like pay for the stuff that she was purchasing there. And that's about it. Like she had been holding his hand and he was right by her side. So as every parent does, you need two hands, especially in the 90s. You're digging through your purse, getting stuff to pay. So she lets go of him, expects him to stay right there and whatever. Well, by the time she's done paying and like getting her stuff, she turns and discovers that James is gone. And she panics, of course, because she can't find him. So she immediately finds the shopping center security personnel and tells them, like, my son was just here. He's 2 years old. I was just paying for my groceries and he's gone. And they take a description of the boy. They announce it over the mall intercom. And by 4:15, so again, 3:40 is when she let go of his hand. 4:15, there is no sign of him. And there's nothing comes, like nobody has seen him. So they call the police. That's how quickly they decided to do it. So that's a matter of 35 minutes, right? In 35 minutes, they decided to take action. The CCTV footage, as they're, looking through it, they actually see, at the time they didn't know it was John and Robert, they see two boys leaving the shopping center and holding on to John's hand is little James Bulger. So they now can tell that James Bulger left the shopping center with these two boys. And this was at 3:42. So 2 minutes is all it was. So when they say, don't take your eyes off your kids for
they
even
fucking mean it.
Yes.
Literal.
Yes. And they said, to be fair, the two boys said that they had been kind of walking throughout the mall stealing stuff, and at one point they saw this little boy who was standing at the entrance door of the butcher shop by himself. So I'm assuming that the cash register was right there as well. So he probably let go of his mom's hand and walked to the door, and that by that time they walked up, grabbed him, and walked away with him. And again, he's 2, and these are they're 10-year-old boys. You're going to think they're fun. They're fun to play with, right? Like you're not going to be afraid of them, most likely. Once the boys leave the mall with James, he begins to cry and wants to go back to his mom. So at this point, they are ignoring him, but they're still like they're holding him. I think they're actually carrying him by this point because he's crying and wanting to go back in the mall. So James and Robert ignore him, but they continue to bring him over towards this like secluded canal area by the mall. When they get to the mall, or when they get to the canal, they actually drop James on his head and they leave him on the ground and he's crying. Here's one of my frustrations. A fucking woman literally sees James on the ground crying and ignores it. Now, my only thought that I can think of as to why somebody would fucking ignore a little boy laying on the ground crying is that she was probably thinking that Robert and John were like his big brothers, or at the very least that they were like responsible for James at that moment.
Yeah, but I don't care. They're still all little kids. You're a fucking adult.
I was just going to say, you see a little baby, really essentially a baby, laying on the ground crying, by the way, who is now is bleeding a little bit from his head and has a huge bump on his head. And he's crying, and you see these two other boys not helping him, but they're standing there. You're not going to go find out what the fuck is going on? Because I sure as hell would.
Fuck, when I was at the gym the other day, there was a girl that was like damn near passing out because she had worked herself up too much. And she was like maybe 5 years younger than me. And I fucking stopped and went over and helped. And another adult came over.
That's what I'm saying. Like this is where the frustrations, this is why I get so frustrated with this story. That is the first time that somebody could have stopped this abduction or at least question the boys, or at least made them uncomfortable enough to where they just walk away, right? This is one time. It happens more than once. Now, before I continue, I do want to note that apparently earlier in the day, this was not their first attempt at abducting a little kid. So earlier in the day, while they were at that shopping center, they had actually gone into a store where there was a woman with her son and her daughter, little son and daughter. And she could hear these kids like talking, and they're like, come here, come on, it's okay, don't be afraid. And she realized that these two boys were talking to her daughter. And so she quickly runs over and grabs her daughter, and she's like, leave, don't talk to them. And she walks away. Well, as she does that, she realizes her son is missing. And so she's like freaking out, running around, trying to figure out where her son is. And she ends up running outside and sees her son walking away with these two boys. And she gets him. Okay?
Okay, bitch, you didn't go to
Thank
security?
You. That's my second thing. Ma'am, you didn't go to security and say these two boys just took my son outside without my knowledge and we don't know who they are, and they also tried to take my daughter. You didn't go to security?
Or even if you didn't go to security, go to the fucking cashier and they would have called security.
You didn't do anything. You just were happy to get your kids back, which is fine, but you literally did not prevent shit. So that's my second frustration. Okay? So we're going to get back into James. So James is crying. This lady doesn't help. And the two boys, so Robert and James, continue to kind of call out to James, like, come here, it's okay. Like how you would to a little kid. Well, like a little kid. Like, come on, guy, it's fine. No, right? Even though he's crying and he has a bump on his head and he's bleeding. So once he's starts walking with the boys realize that his wound on his head is it's completely visible. It's like a bump. How you can get, how you hit your head and you can get like a goose egg. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what he had, but he was also bleeding, right? So he was bleeding a little bit. And so they see this and they're like, ooh, people can see that. So he was wearing like this coat thing. And they basically pull the coat up, like kind of like a hood over his head to kind of block it, but it doesn't really block it. You can still see it. It was definitely visible. And the reason I know it was visible is because multiple people, after this whole thing went down, said that they saw a 2-year-old crying and having a head injury. And there was no there was no parent present. And they did nothing. Okay, multiple people reported seeing these two boys with a little boy who was injured, and nobody fucking did anything. And I mean, okay, when I say multiple people just watched this little crying 2-year-old boy walk away with visible injuries, that's fucking insane to me. First of all, an older woman actually approaches the boys and says, what happened to this little boy? And Robert and John say, I don't know. We found him at the bottom of the hill like this as an adult. If that is your response, I'm going to say, you know what? Let me go ahead and take this little one either to the hospital or to the police. Mm-hmm. You guys don't know who he is. And you guys are only you're young too. So let me take him. No. She says, you need to bring him to the police station. To which they're like, yes, ma'am. And she goes on her merry way.
Okay.
Another woman stops them and says, hey guys, what's going on? He looks like he's crying and he's got an injury. And every time they would be asked by people, they'd say oh, that's my, not this lady, but sometimes they'd say it's my brother, depending on who said something. Oh, this is just my brother. Or sometimes when they were specifically approached, they'd say, oh, we just found him like this, right? So this one lady walks up to them and she's like, is everything okay here? Like, what's going on? And their response is the same, oh, we don't know. We just found him down the hill. And they said, we're on our way to take him to the police station. To which she says, I'll go ahead and take him to the police station. It's okay. Okay. And then she turns to this lady and says, can you watch my daughter so I can run him to the police station? And the lady was like, no. And she goes, okay. And she goes, well, you guys said you're going to the police station, right? And they say, okay, go ahead. What the fuck? Bring your daughter with you.
Yeah, I don't know why you can't.
Why can you not bring your own other child with you? Just go to the. So again, that's now how many people? 3 people that physically were in the vicinity of this little boy that could have stopped this, that chose to mind their fucking business. I'm all about minding your business, but not when it's a little child.
Not when it comes to kids.
Not when it's a child who's visibly injured and has no parent around and is potentially following just siblings. I have done true crime enough to know that siblings can beat the absolute fuck out of each other. And there needs to be an adult present. So, fuck all of you. I told you, this one makes me mad. So, there were so many adults who dropped the ball. It wasn't just those two. I mean, there was multiple people who reported to see these 3 kids walking through their town. They walked 2.5 miles with James through the city.
That's also a lot for a 2-year-old with a head injury.
In total, brace yourself, there were a total of about 38 people who either came in contact with the boys or at least paid attention enough to them to be able to report to the police after his body was found. 38 people.
I hope that haunts every single one of them.
My only explanation for this is it's the bystander effect where they thought somebody else was going to do something.
See, and I'm going to be honest, because I know about that effect. That's why I try to push myself to
that
not
is why
do that.
This is off topic, but the other day, Sierra literally calls me and she's like, I have to go to my therapy appointment, but there is a lost dog at McDonald's, and there's a woman that's like taking a picture of it. And my response is, she goes, so I don't know if you guys want to go there or not. We're big dog lovers. And so I was like, well, let me get Dad. And I said, but do you think that lady is going to take the dog? And she goes, I don't think so. I don't know. And I was like, you know what? Fine. So I tell my husband, and he's like, yeah, let's go. We get in the car, and sure as shit, we see this dog running. And we actually ended up
side note, it was like hot as
it was really hot
for here.
And it was running, and it was like, it actually crossed like the busy road every time. I was like, oh fuck, it's gonna die. But nobody hit it. But what I saw that day, and I want people to hear me when I say this, and this is also, I think, why this pisses me off so bad. On that day, we drive, because it's not very far from our house. We see this dog. So we're following it because it's running. So we know it's headed to like this Safeway parking lot. So we go into the Safeway parking lot. We get into the parking lot, and there are, I shit you not, 7 people trying to trap this dog. Then the dog runs back across the busy street. So we are in our car. We go across the street, and there is a man running from the 7-Eleven trying to chase this dog down. So then we're driving, trying to get ahead of it, because I'm trying to get up in front of it, because I was going to get out of the car and like try to call it, because every time we'd pull up next to it, it would keep running. And so we end up doing that. Well, it like stops and tries to run behind our car. So we like turn the car to kind of like block it. And all of a sudden this other car comes out, and this old man and this old lady are like, that's our dog. Thank you so much. And you knew it was their dog, because their dog was like jumping and wagging its tail, ready to get in the car. But what made me happy, and I told this to my husband, like a total of, I'd say like 10 people tried to help this dog. So why the fuck are 10 people trying to save a dog and 38 motherfuckers couldn't even try to save a kid?
Right.
Why? That, in my mind, kids and dogs are equal. They're innocent. So if I mean, if I'm going to help a dog, I'm helping a kid. So
well, this shit clearly not all kids are innocent, but
no, but I mean little kids, like I'd say 5 and under. They're pretty innocent. Once they hit 5, they kind of can be assholes. But most of the time, yeah, kids are innocent and they deserve to be protected. I'm going to be ranting this whole fucking episode. I'm sorry. Anyways, they walked 2.5 miles through the town, through the city. Now, eventually, they make their way to a set of railroad tracks. Now, earlier in their walk, one of the boys had actually thrown that blue paint. Remember, they stole that blue paint? They threw that blue paint into James's eyes. So they're already being dicks. And okay, so now you even know when he's walking through town, not only does he have a cut and a bruise, but he also probably has blue paint all over him. And nobody thought that looked weird. So when they're at the train tracks, they decide to kick him, stomp him, throw bricks at him, throw stones at him. They force batteries in his mouth. And then they finally dropped a railway fish plate on James, which my understanding of a railway fish plate is like one of the really heavy pieces of railroad onto James, which actually resulted in 10 skull fractures. It was concluded that James Bulger suffered a total of 42 injuries, and not one of them could be considered the fatal blow. He did die, but they're not sure which one actually caused his death.
I hope it was the first one.
I do too, but he was kicked in the beginning, so probably not.
I'm sure it was, honestly, and my gut is telling me it was the last
fish plate.
Yeah,
I agree.
And if that's the last thing they did, which I'm assuming it was.
Yeah. John and Robert then lay James's body on the tracks and they weight him down. They want basically a train to come and run over James to make it look like his death was an accident, which does happen later. They're not there. They leave and a train comes and does run over James's body. Now, it was determined that he had died prior to being run over by the train, though, which is the only piece of fucking mind I can have.
Literally.
Because if he was just unconscious and then laid on a train track and he was weighted down, so if he would have been alive, no. So he had already passed when he was put on the train tracks. 4 days.
I feel like even if that wasn't true, like I would want the
lie. That's all
like,
I want to be told.
I would just want the lie.
No,
just fucking tell me the lie.
The medical examiners actually determined that, and they determined that, I think, based off of like,
well, there's certain
time of death and oxygen levels and things like that they're able to tell.
There's certain things that can
and like
show
the time that he would have his death would be.
If you watched
versus
Bones, you would know.
Right. 4 boys end up finding the remains of James 2 days later, so he's out there for 2 days before anybody finds him. Upon the discovery of the remains, the police believed that there may have been sexual assault involved as well. However, Robert and John both deny those allegations and always have. The reason they felt that there was sexual assault was because little James's socks, pants, and underwear had been removed. And they could never prove that there was sexual assault, which I guess is probably a good thing because it probably didn't happen because there would be proof, I would assume. He's 2. I'm sure you would find proof of something, right? Now the police investigate, and they are able to figure out that two boys had abducted James from the mall through the CCTV footage. They figured this out rather quickly because as soon as first they were already looking at the CCTV footage after he disappeared, but now they're focusing on it, and they were able to follow the moves of these kids, and they are able to see, yes, he was taken by those boys. A woman actually ends up calling the police because they put it on like the news stations. Like, do you recognize these boys? And it's grainy footage because it's the 90s.
Well, it's the CCTV 90s footage.
Yeah. So, but they enhanced it as much as they could. And they were like, do you know any of these boys? Blah, blah, blah. This lady, an anonymous woman, ends up calling the police, and she's like, yeah, I actually recognize that boy. That is John. And that other boy is his friend. And they oftentimes skip school. So I don't know if it was a teacher or something. So this
maybe
ends up,
it was their teacher.
That's what I'm saying. Like the fact that she knew the name,
Unless they're neighbors, but I feel like the likelihood it really is the teacher or a staff member.
Right. So this ends up leading to them talking to Jon Venables and Robert Thompson and arresting them. Because now they're realizing, they match the descriptions. They take a look at the boys, take a look at the CCTV footage and go, oh yeah, that's them. 100% them. But you can imagine how fucking shocked the cops were when they realized that these were 2 10-year-old boys.
Oh, I believe it.
They actually said from the video, they thought they were dealing with like 14, 15-year-old boys. Because it's CCTV
Dude, I swear
footage.
to God, CCTV footage always makes you look way fucking older than you actually are.
So they were blown away. And they're just like, okay, I mean, if this is who we think, I mean, they were the last ones to at least see him. So when they go and start looking at their homes and stuff, they actually are able to confirm that the blue paint that was found on James matched blue paint that was found on both boys' clothes. So already they've got that. Then both boys had blood on their shoes as well. Now the blood on Robert's shoe was able to be matched by DNA to James. So now they know for sure these boys had something to do with his death as well. There was also a bruise pattern that was found on James's cheek that matched the shoes that were worn by Robert. So now they've been able to connect all these dots. And it was also reported that during the questioning, now this is the only time that I'm like, this puts their age in perspective. Robert is being questioned. Now remember, Robert's the one that they said was a con man. He would cry and all this stuff. However, Robert asked the police if James had been taken to the hospital to get him alive again. So that also puts in perspective the immaturity of a 10-year-old who thought, well, we beat the shit out of him, but did you bring him to the hospital so he could be alive? Type of a thing. Like, didn't really grasp the concept of what they did killed that little boy. And I mean, they didn't see him get run over by a train. So in their mind, they probably maybe thought that he would live but maybe not. Like, I don't think they knew the ramifications of what they were doing. Does not mean they can't be held responsible. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that specific quote, because the literal quote is, did you bring him to the hospital to get him alive again? That's literally the quote from Robert. So he's a 10-year-old boy who's asking, did you get him to live? Okay. So I don't want to say anything good about these boys, but I'm just saying that puts into perspective their age. Right. So on February 20th, 1993, both Robert and John are charged with murder. And on November 1st, 1993, the trial begins. And the boys denied the murder and the abduction charges. Their trial was pretty well publicized, and many people were actually calling for their deaths, which I find I can't get on board with killing a 10-year-old. I know that
they killed a 2-year-old.
I understand that. But I can't get on board with killing somebody who I can't do it. I just can't. There's just a maturity level that I can't get on board with. But I will also tell you that there were also a lot of people who were pissed off at the way that they were being tried, because they were not being tried as adults. However, they were brought to trial in adult court. So they even said that, like, during the trial, they had to sit in the chairs that like adults would sit in. And they had to sit on these chairs that were actually like boosted up so they could see.
That's kind of funny.
Right? Because they were so little, because they're little. So people were upset because they're like, you didn't even put them in juvenile court. You put them in adult court. And it's like, yeah, but they did an adult crime. They weren't charged as adults, but they were in adult court for this proceeding.
Right.
Robert Thompson was actually reported as having no remorse, or at least what people thought, that he had no remorse. And it had been assumed by everybody that Robert was the instigator. They were never able to prove that he was the instigator. They were able to confirm that the boys knew right from wrong, though, because before they did trial, they actually both were court mandated to see psychiatrists. And the psychiatrist came out and said, oh, no, they know what they did was wrong. Okay, so if you know right from wrong, you can stand trial. It's not an insanity thing. It's not a mental defect thing. You can stand trial. So they did know right from wrong. So therefore, they were held accountable for their actions. However, to this day, there has never been a real motive as to why this happened. They've never said why. Nobody knows why. Now, both of the boys were convicted of the murder of James Bulger, and they were both sentenced to serve what is called at Her Majesty's pleasure, which is actually standard protocol for juvenile offenders convicted of murder or manslaughter. What this means is that the sentence has no maximum time. So they may never get out. They may always, you never know. But it does have a minimum sentence on a case-by-case basis. So in this particular case, the minimum time for each boy originally was 10 years. However, there was a lawyer who fought and said, come on, like they're only 10. So they dropped it to 8. So the minimum...
Bro, I thought 10 wasn't even enough. What the fuck?
Right. So the minimum that they had to serve was 8 years before they could potentially get out of prison. But they could also apply to get out of prison at 18.
Which, I mean, I would say which technically gets them to the adult age.
Right. So, which was what the fight, or not the fight, but that was the argument, is they'll be 18. Like at that point, reassess them because they've hit the 18 mark. They're different ages, like adult, whatever. Their brain
isn't fully developed till 25, so you might as well wait till then.
It's not, but you're more mature at 18 than you are at 10. And so they were like, then we'll reassess. Okay, fine. And then from there, if they chose not to let them out of prison, then they would continue to go until they decided they wanted to let them out of prison. At the age of 18, they are assessed, and it is found that they are deemed not to be a danger to society, and they could be released. So in 2001, both boys had served their 8 years and by all accounts stayed out of trouble in jail, and they were both released. Now they were also, because England does this shit, they gave them new identities as well.
Oh,
remember
that.
Mary Bell? They did the thing. Remember they did the same thing to Mary Bell.
Oh.
Gave a new identity.
I'm sorry.
And Mary Bell was the same scenario, except for I think Mary Bell got out in her 20s, but she was.
But I think
again,
it makes me wonder if it's because they were kids.
It is because they're kids.
I still think that's bullshit.
So they gave them new identities, and their reason for giving them new identities is they were worried that there was going to be vigilante justice, and so they were like, we're going to let them out. We give them new identities, and not only do they get a whole ass new identity, but they also get to be legally anonymous, which means that they don't have to, like, they probably, my guess would be they have one person that they contact if they move or whatever, and nobody else has to know who they are. They are not legally allowed. They are basically exempt from existing in the world.
That's still dumb.
I agree. So as it sits today, Robert Thompson seems to have reintegrated into life. Nobody really knows much about him other than the fact that he has not been in trouble since this incident at 10 years old. It has also been reported that James's mother ended up finding out his new identity and where he lived and chose not to go public with it because she's worried about vigilante justice herself, not on her, but on him. And she hates him with all of her being. But it's also reported that he does have a boyfriend and that he is living a semi-relatively normal life. Now, there was an article I read where people are absolutely disgusted by the fact that he has a boyfriend because apparently the boyfriend knows about his crimes. How anybody knows this shit, though, I don't know, because if he's anonymous, if he's living in anonymity, I don't know if that's actually true that the boyfriend would know.
Not only that, but even if he does know, and this is the little sop part of me, and it's hard because I fucking cannot stand the whole thing, but there is the argument of he was 10 years old. Exactly. So you're going to, like, at the end of the day, how I feel about it, you're still a murderer. At the end of the day,
yep.
You are still forever and always going to be a murderer.
Yep.
If you ever do it again, that's a different story. But at the end of the day, you are a murderer. Well, however, you were also 10 years old.
Correct.
So when you're 40 fucking years old, it's the same thing. Like, yeah, your past in a way defines you, but and it's the same way that I feel.
But it does. Yes, your past defines
way.
You, but your past does not make what you are as a person.
Listen,
like, you can't hold your past against you.
I feel the same way with politics. I don't know a lot about politics, but I'm sorry. Why are we bringing shit up that they did fucking 30 years ago?
I agree.
It's not going to affect what happens right now.
I agree.
It could have 30 years ago.
People like to say it. People like to say that
your past haunts you and it's stupid.
They like to say that it like, what do you want to call it? That it kind of like speaks to your character, except for it doesn't. Because when I was 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, if I was the same person that I was back then, we'd have a whole ass different life. I might have still gotten pregnant. We'd have a whole ass different life. I mean, like, legit. I hung out with some really not good people. And if I would have stuck with that, Sierra, I would probably be in and out of jail, honest to God. I would probably be in and out of jail, and you would call people who also have been in and out of jail your aunts and uncles. That would literally have been your life. So I am all about that. I agree with you. I do not think your past I think your past helps form you, but I do not think your past represents you, because it's what you do with those lessons and how you move on from them. Your past is in the past. And if you grow from what you did, then that means it helped teach you. If you didn't, well, that's on you. But I agree with you.
I will say, though, and this might make me hypocritical with everything I just said, you at the same time as a person, I feel like, I'm not saying you have to degrade them or be a dick, but you do have the right to judge somebody based on what they used to do. You don't have to, and I'm not saying judge them in the sense of like, that is who you are forever and always. Like, oh, I'm going to judge you for something you did 30 years ago, but when you're like meeting somebody or talking to somebody, you can go, okay, but I'm not going to forget about that.
I think
it's hard to explain it. I don't know. It sounded better in my head.
No, I get what you're trying to say. I think that when I meet people for the first time, or if I know somebody or whatever, like people that I personally know, a lot of them have turned out to be fabulous humans, really terrible pasts. Okay. I would never hold that against them, but that's
a good way to put it. Like, not holding it against them, but still.
Like, let's put
still making it known and aware.
Let's put it into the most easy way to understand. If you meet somebody, you're on dating apps. If you meet somebody and they're honest with you and say, "Oh yeah, I've had 17 relationships in the past 5 years because I cheated on all of them," that's going to make you go,
it's going to put up a flag.
Exactly. It's
and
gonna
that's the thing.
That's it. It's going to make you kind of, okay,
it's not gonna
let me tread lightly here.
Right. It's not going to make you like dive on the deep end and be like, "Oh yeah," but it's also I mean, granted, dependent on some people, but like for me, I'm not going to go, "Oh, well then never the fucking mind. Like I don't want to even talk to you," because that was, for all I know, that could have been. I mean, I'm dating guys that are all the way up into their late 30s, like that.
Well, and people
that was fucking 20 years ago.
People are different, and for Robert,
and certain circumstances too, like dating, for instance, certain circumstances and certain relationships, especially when they end, sometimes literally change how you do the rest of your dating life. And for some people, it makes it stop being like fuck buddies and then instead want a relationship, like so shit like that.
Learn, you move on. And for Robert in particular, I feel the same way about him that I do Mary Bell. What they did was horrific, horrendous, and not excusable at all. However, they did go to prison, albeit a fucking short ass amount of time. In my opinion, they should have been in prison longer. But we don't know what Robert did while he was in prison. And what I mean by that is Mary Bell went through tons of therapy. Lots and lots of therapy for the fucking 8 years she was in prison. Maybe Robert did too. And when Robert came out, he's probably most likely a changed person. Okay. And got anonymity so that he can live his life. And maybe he's not a natural born killer, right? Maybe this was one of those scenarios where it was two boys hanging out, peer pressure. Not that this is an excuse for anything, but I'm trying to wrap my brain around how a 10-year-old can kill a 2-year-old and then go on and live a normal life. That's the only way I can think about it, is that they originally thought that Robert was the instigator. They originally thought that Robert was the one who pushed on this. However, I don't see it that way after doing the research, and I'll continue and you'll know why. Because Robert has stayed out of prison. And you have to remember, they were born in 1982. So they are literally today 44 years old, and he has never been in trouble since he was 10 years old. That to me screams somebody was reformed. That screams to me somebody did something that he probably is super incredibly ashamed of and has moved on with his life in the best way possible. And that is possible. We have seen it with people who can be reformed after killing somebody. This is not the first time. We've talked about Jamel. He also did the same thing. So it's not impossible. It's just a lot of work. And maybe he did the work, right? Now, Jon Venables, on the other hand, not so much. So he gets out in 2001 at 18 years old. Okay. Based off of the way that these two have navigated their lives after getting out of prison, I would venture to guess that Jon was behind the whole thing and Robert was there as like a sidekick. So in 2010, Jon is actually put into prison for downloading images images of abuse, physical and sexual abuse being done to toddler boys. Okay. It was also discovered that Jon's new identity and anonymity had been compromised like while he was in prison before he was supposed to get out. And so he had contacted his lawyer and said, "I'm pretty sure like everybody, like a bunch of people know who I am now, and they're able to link me to my past crimes." And so they fought for him to get a new identity and more anonymity. And in 2013, which by the way, why he only got 3 fucking years for downloading images like that after his fucking previous crime, I don't know. Unless
it was one of those sealed records.
I was just going to say, unless the anonymity thing makes it to where his new identity doesn't link him and then they don't know.
Bullshit.
He was eligible for parole. Now, that isn't possible that they didn't know, because James's father, the little boy who was killed, actually tells the parole board in 2013 that he should never be released. That Jon should never be released. To which the parole board says, "Noted, we're going to go ahead and release him. And we're going to go ahead and give him a new identity and anonymity." Jesus. Yeah. This is the other part that fucking pisses me off about this story.
I can't even blame our own country for the
No.
fucking justice system.
No. Now, in November of 2017, so he gets out in 2013. So now let's recap. Jon has been in jail at the age of 10 for murder, gets out at 18. In 2010, goes back in for downloading images of abuse being done to toddler boys, gets out in 2013, and is given a new identity. And now November of 2017, Jon is put back in prison again for literally the same thing. The same fucking thing.
So at what point is it 3 strikes, you're out? Because I feel like we're at that point.
Only this one's worse. So not only does he get caught for having over 1,000 images on his computer, he also has a fucking pedophile manual on his computer, which literally is a manual that gives directions on how to be a fucking pedophile. Why this exists, I have no idea. And I'm talking like it tells you how to groom kids, how to sexually abuse kids. It literally word for word tells you how to do that. Okay. Now in my mind, I'm over here like, this is the 3rd time. And I'm feeling
and
like
if they sealed it, still second.
I was going to say, and and they must know. Well, maybe not because it's a new identity, but regardless.
Yeah, they're like new identity, your old crimes don't exist.
Somehow it's got to be related somehow. They have to know about his previous crimes, right? So I'm thinking this is the 3rd time, and this has to do with kids and being a pedophile and all this shit. I feel like this is the time where you're like, yeah, he just doesn't get out. He is actually sentenced to 3 years and 4 months in prison. Now, something must have happened along the lines in prison, though, because he had to apply for parole, which in 2020. So he was in prison for a hell of a lot more. Well, 3 years would be 2020, but he had to apply for parole. So normally when you get sentenced, you just get out once you've served your time. But this is not how it went for him, because he had to he applied for parole in 2020 and was denied. Then he applied in 2023 and the parole board said, no, you are still a danger to children.
Oh,
so
finally.
I have no idea what's happened to make them be able to keep him in now, because once you serve your time, you serve time, but maybe they do things differently in England. I don't know. So as of 2023, he had applied for parole. He was denied parole, deeming that he was a danger to children, which good. We're going to backtrack a little bit to 2019, though, because James Bulger's father had actually petitioned to the courts to release Jon Venables' identity and to take away his anonymity, basically because this man has a new identity and has anonymity, and he can hurt and harm anybody he wants to. Because people, when you meet him, when he goes to a job, when he doesn't, nobody knows his record. And his record's fucking terrible. So the fact that they continued to give him the anonymity. And actually, it was denied. They denied it. And their reason was they have a fear of vigilante justice.
Why is it a fuck? Okay,
listen,
I get the fear. I get the fear, but just let it fucking happen at this point, because this man is a danger to society.
Well, I was going to say, my thing is,
specifically children.
When they were 10 and then got out when they were 18, yeah,
fine.
Okay, I can understand that.
After that, though,
but
no.
This man is continuing to do shit, and you're protecting a murderer / pedophile. You're protecting him, and for what reason? What reason?
Because the likelihood of him sexually abusing, raping, or
100%.
fucking killing another kid is probably pretty high. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. I know you said that they deny about the sexual abuse to him, but after hearing this, I can't.
I don't know about Robert, but I
don't think Robert did. But
now,
him?
as you listen to this story, this person most definitely orchestrated this shit. I could bet money upon money that he orchestrated this shit. And I think when they interviewed Robert back in the day when he would cry, maybe he wasn't conning them. Maybe he genuinely was fucking scared. Not that it gives any excuse, but maybe instead of him being the con man, maybe it was more like, he was scared, so he just lied through his teeth as much as he could, thinking he could get away with it like any other 10-year-old would do. So, and also by the way, James's mother, because they got divorced like a year after their son was murdered, they end up getting divorced. But James's mother had actually come out and said that she also does not agree with releasing his identity because she is worried about vigilante justice, which I think is a very brave thing to post, because if I'm going to go on record right now and say if it was my child, I would want vigilante justice. I know that that's
You yourself would do vigilante justice.
probably correct. That is something I would definitely go to jail for. And I'd happily go to jail for that. I'd literally kill the motherfucker and then turn myself in and be like, take me away, bitch. Like, I would be happy to watch somebody die if they killed my child. Period. That sounds crazy. I probably should.
Government, please don't come for my mom. She's lying, I promise.
Anyways, that's like, there was a TikTok that was going around. It was a TikTok asking moms. It was like, would you kill for your child? And it was asking, and like a lot of the moms were like, no. And I'm over here like, what the fuck? And then there's a bunch of moms like, absolutely 100%. I'm like, yep. Like, I would kill for my child 100%. They're my fucking child. Anyway, that's why Sierra calls us when homeless people are trying to like stalk her. Because anyways,
first of all, you made it sound like I was scared. I wasn't scared.
I didn't say that. I didn't mean you were scared. I meant, you know, that we're not going to fuck around. We're going to,
well, because I just knew if shit's going south. Well, first of all, y'all are right down the road.
Plus your dog would have, I mean, I know that Olive gets scared, but if
she's
somebody,
a fucking puss.
If somebody tried to approach you, she would absolutely at least scare the shit out of him, if not bite him.
I don't know. She's a little chunky. They might just squish her.
I don't know, man. She's pretty beefy though.
She's got Dad was just telling me, he's like, I was playing with Olive the other day. He's like, she fucking bites really hard if she gets aggressive. And I was like, oh yeah, she does.
Yep, she does. So
got a strong ass bite.
Jon Venables actually will be up for parole again sometime this year. So in 2025, sometime at this point,
gets denied.
He will be up for parole. Now, James's mother has come forward and said there is no rehabilitation for Jon Venables.
No.
And he needs to never be released from prison.
Mm-hmm.
And
agreed.
She actually is going to be petitioning the court that he does not get released.
Agreed.
And I think Jon's father will be involved in that as well. I think they'll both come forward and basically tell their story and make sure that he doesn't. And I agree with that. I think that Jon should be in jail for the rest of his life. As far as Robert goes, I don't know how I feel about it, because I don't think that 8 years is enough for murder. But given his age and given his reaction, again, because remember, Robert's the one who asked if they got him alive again. So when you think about those things, you're like, or was he just a fucked up kid? Or was he like a follower who just did what his friend wanted to do and then realized the ramifications later and couldn't take it back? And for that, do they deserve a second chance? Like, I kind of feel like everybody deserves a second chance at some point in life, depending on the situation. And in this situation, both boys got a second chance.
Yeah,
and
but I feel
one
like
took it and excelled with it, and the other one took it and shit all over it.
At the end of the day, I will say I think their initial sentence, though, should have been
too small.
At minimum, them being up to get out or whatever the fuck.
15 years is what I was thinking, minimum.
Well,
they'd be out at 25.
Well, I was just going to say minimum age that I was going to say was 25.
Yep.
I can argue that's when your brain's fully fucking developed.
That's the argument I would have used.
Because I guarantee you, I mean, I can't guarantee shit, obviously, but if they would have waited till 25, I'm sure they would have done some tests and therapy and shit. Robert probably still would have potentially gotten out. Jon, I don't know if he would have gotten out, which means I don't know if he would have done any of the other shit. And he probably would have been in jail fucking for the rest of his life.
Well, and I think that
they're just lucky he didn't act upon that shit.
Well, and who knows if he didn't? That's the other part.
Yeah, that's true.
Because the thing is, who knows? I mean, my guess would be there's a chance he did. Because I feel like
had kids that he had in mind.
Something. Because you don't just download a bunch of that shit and then... But I think... You don't download a bunch of that shit and do nothing. But the thing that boggles my mind and bugs me the most is the fact that he murdered a 2-year-old little boy when he was 10. And then you catch him with videos and pictures of toddler boys being abused. And you didn't think that was... Well,
that alone should have been, okay, you're never getting out.
You're never getting out because you obviously did not learn your lesson from the first time.
But again... If they sealed it and said, well,
but they had to have known because they had to have known because remember, James's father told the parole board he can't be let out. He murdered my son, so they know that they're connected, but they just for some reason felt like he was able to be rehabilitated. And I don't quite understand. I think I would hate to have the job of being somebody on the parole board. I really think that would be a stressful job because you have to listen to you have questions. You have to look at their record in prison. Then you have to listen to what they're saying and try to believe them or not believe them. And that's a fucking, So a lot of these people, they're fucking con artists. They can absolutely give you a sob story to make you feel like they should get a second chance. So this one really bugged me. And I'm sure that it's not the first time this has happened, but it just really irks me. And yes, it irks me that it's 2 10-year-old boys, but what pissed me off the most in this whole thing is how many fucking people
could have stopped it.
Yes. That is the thing that makes me so angry is I understand minding your business, but not minding your business for a child. I don't understand why we continue to hear these stories of kids who are abused or they're abducted in plain sight because people didn't want to get involved. Like, it does not hurt to ask a question. You don't have to be an asshole about it, but you can very simply walk up and be like, hey, is everything okay here? And then when you're close enough to this little boy and you see he's bleeding from his head, your next step is, I'm an adult. I need to take care of this child because these are children taking care of children. My honest thought would be, if I was in that scenario, I would think, this is really judgy of me, I would think that these are kids whose parents are either not home very often or like they're kids that maybe their parents are kind of neglectful, because walking around with these kids, like, I then would be like, yeah, let me take this kid somewhere. That's just my thought. How is that not the thought of 38 plus people? And I'm sure that James's parents are just, that's probably one thing that haunts them every day.
Okay, but also think about it.
38 fucking people saw my son crying and bleeding and not one of them stopped to help.
But think about it too. That's now 2025.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's like drastic, but think of the time difference too.
In the 90s?
Mm-hmm.
So I was a kid in the 90s. And I'll tell you right now, in the 90s, it was ingrained in our head that somebody was trying to fucking steal us. It was ingrained that you needed to not talk to people. It was ingrained in your head that strangers were bad. It was ingrained in your head that you're going to end up on a milk box or a milk carton as a missing person. So, yeah, I absolutely, if I was an adult in the 90s, I absolutely would have said something, especially in that scenario. Because the 90s, 80s and 90s was when it became a really big thing about, like, kidnapping was talked about all the time. I swear to God, I grew up.
Yeah, but you wouldn't think that. Well, first of all, that was the United States too.
I wouldn't. That's true. So
who knows what it was like in England?
That's true. But I am saying that I grew up thinking that I was going to get kidnapped at some point in my life. That's how much we were talked about.
Okay. That's like, definitely not how I grew up.
Literally grew up thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get kidnapped. Because you also have to realize that in the 80s and 90s, we were by ourselves a lot. Not that we didn't have parents, but like we were riding our bikes. We were the
You
kids.
guys had the street light rule. We did not grow up with
Actually, that. I did not. I had the it's time for dinner because we were all living in the same neighborhood. And then after dinner, we went back outside and played. And
yeah, definitely echoed in that neighborhood.
In the summertime, we would stay out until 11 or 12 o'clock at night playing hide and go seek in the dark in our neighborhood. Like this, we were neighborhood street rats. That's what we were. And our parents were home, but they knew where the fuck we were. But like there were many times where I would ride my bike with my brother to Albertsons, which was literally like 2 miles away. And we'd ride there by ourselves, and we're in elementary school. Like that's just what we did. And we're just and we didn't have cell phones. We had nothing. We had to use pay phones if we wanted to call people.
Now my parents have my location.
For real, we have location services now. But I mean, that's the stuff that I'm talking about. Is I'm like, we grew up knowing that like there's a possibility we'll get kidnapped because we're going out and about and parents were not around. However, if a kid is crying and bleeding, people in that time frame, I do think in the United States anyways, might have said something because again, we were always worried about you being kidnapped. So if you see a child crying on the ground, somebody's going to say something, or at least you'd hope. I, as a parent, would, but I was, in 93, I was not.
But again, at the end of the day, you would never suspect. You don't
suspect a 10-year-old,
another child to abduct and murder another child.
No, you
especially that they don't know.
But I don't think
whether they knew that or not.
But my point is for me as a parent, it's not that I thought these kids would be abducting them. What would go through my brain is, you guys are little kids along with this little kid. let me help you as an adult get this little kid help, because he obviously needs help. And you two are just like walking around, because the thing was, is they could hear him crying. And then you could, some of the fucking people said, well, like, I heard at one point the boys were laughing. Yeah. The older boys were laughing at the 2-year-old who's literally bawling and hurting. Why is that not suspicious? Why did you not think that they were being assholes to their brother if that's what you thought it was? But again, everybody just kind of was like, well, mind my business. And I'm like, no, I'll mind my business most of the time. But I'm not going to mind my business. If I physically see somebody hurting somebody else, I'm not minding my business. Ever. I've never minded my business. I've literally watched a man punch a woman in the face and did not mind my business. And I'm a woman. But I'm not minding my business. I'm not. You can punch me in the face too. I'm not minding my business. And if I see a child crying with 2 little kids and they're all laughing at the little boy, I'm not minding my business. I'm walking up and taking care of this little boy. That's just it. I'm just not going to do it. But if you're like full ass grown, 2 grown ass men or 2 grown ass women, y'all are fighting, I'm going to mind my business because I don't give a shit.
Now, if there's an animal involved,
I'll never mind my business.
Trisha might see red.
If there's an animal involved, that's it. Done. Taken care of. You're taken out. Period.
Worse than if it was a child. The animals are above the children.
Terrible. It's terrible. Anyways, so thanks for joining us today. And if you like what you're listening to, if you like hearing us talk, make sure you're following us, share us, check out our socials, Crime B Podcast or Crime Bitches Podcast, depending on what thing you're on, because some of the social medias don't allow us to say the word bitch. And bitches. And look forward next week to our very special 1-year episode coming up. Other than that, I would like to say thank you very much for listening to us talk about the 2 10-year-olds who viciously murdered a 2-year-old boy in England. And until next week, catch you on the flip side, bitches.
Bye, bitches.